Hello and welcome to Real Menopause Talk. My guest today is Tania Elfersy, and if you're interested in natural solutions for your menopause symptoms, then this episode is for you. I've learnt, particularly as a yoga teacher, that the body craves homeostasis. Under stress, it will adapt in whatever way it sees fit to stay alive and as well as possible. What I've learnt and studied about menopause is that stress management is the ultimate foundation for thriving through midlife. A holiday, as I'm sure many of you know, works wonders in all sorts of ways. Tania takes us through her experience of perimenopause and a deeper examination of just why a holiday might be so beneficial. She also takes us through menopause in history, which will blow your mind, and how she cured her symptoms in just a matter of days, finding where true health lies. We also talk about why HRT is not an essential part of life, with notable exceptions, of course, such as surgical menopause, for example. Tania is a true advocate for looking at your life. Our healing is so much simpler than we think. Tania, lovely to meet you this morning. I have been enjoying your website and various blogs of yours and look forward to getting into all our conversation in great depth. Would you like to start by telling everybody a little bit about yourself?
Sure, lovely to be here. I'm originally from Northwest London. I, in my adult life, toured a bit around the world and then moved to Israel in my 20s. And a few years in, I started a career in high tech, in corporate marketing, long hours, lots of world travel, all good, until I decided to become a mum and knew there was no way that I would be able to combine the two. So I left the corporate world, and luckily my husband's business took off just at the right time when I stepped down from being the breadwinner. And we had 3 kids within 4 years, and now they are all teenagers, mid and late teens. So that makes home life very interesting every day. I gradually returned to work after my youngest went into nursery school by self-publishing a book on motherhood that I co-authored with a good friend, but then went off on a self-publishing journey. And as I juggled my little business and motherhood, I found that quite stressful. Mm-hmm. And I started having symptoms of perimenopause that I didn't know what was going on at the time. And that set me off on another journey. And within a few years, I managed to have what I could describe as a spontaneous healing experience where all my symptoms went away within days. And I thought that was pretty shocking, and timidly started to share what I had seen and how my healing had come about. And that was back in 2015. And so since then, I've been working with women. I trained as a transformative coach, and I've been helping women online, women from around the world, with getting back into, let's say, the brilliance of their body and being able to heal the symptoms of perimenopause and menopause by themselves.
See, that sounds extraordinary, particularly the in a few days, because even if you went down the medical route, as I understand it, it's about 6 weeks before you can expect to see any results. First of all, what took you to Israel?
The weather.
I don't blame you.
I always said, no, I'm always a sun seeker. No, I grew up with a love of the country and we have extended family here. So I just moved here in my 20s.
Glorious. Where are you now then in terms of menopause, given that that was 2015?
15, yes. So I'm 53, still menstruating, but lightly. And now I rarely will have any symptom, but it can happen if I'm totally stressed, overworked, tired, etc. Then something will pop up, but soon it will disappear. That's been really the case since 2015.
What were your symptoms of perimenopause, if you can track back to before you recognised it?
Yes. So it started off when I had no clue what was going on. I was just sick a lot. I sort of just had these fevers in the background, etc. And then I was getting frequent migraines. And then I had really bad mood swings, which I came to understand was sort of 2 weeks of PMS every month. And I was having skin problems and night sweats and achy breasts and other things. But those were the main things. But at first, when I didn't know what was going on, I was just trying to treat each symptom individually. And I went right from the start on a natural route. That was just my calling. And I was able to get some kind of symptom relief, but I really didn't feel that myself at all. I felt at first I was going a bit mad because I didn't know about perimenopause. And then a few years in, I heard a webinar and I heard that some women could experience PMS on steroids in their 40s. And I was like, PMS on steroids? That sounds like my experience exactly. And that was the first time I'd heard about perimenopause. And I was like, oh, how comes I never knew? I'm in my mid-40s. And I asked all my 40-something friends and nobody knew. And I was like, wow, that's incredible that we don't know what's going on. And I, of course, thought, oh, menopause, that's in my early 50s. No one had told me, oh, no, it can start, 10 years before or more. And actually, I'd never asked. So there I was going on a journey to find out. And it didn't really make sense to me why I was experiencing symptoms. Why would it be my hormones? Why would they start misbehaving? I'd been fine in my teenage years. I had 3 natural pregnancies and births. And then all of a sudden at midlife, this whole story of, oh, now your hormones have gone crazy. It didn't really make sense. So I really went on a journey to try and discover what could be the cause of symptoms.
This seems to be a common thread, starting off with people lose their sense of self, very much so. They don't know what's going on. They don't understand it. They don't know what they're looking for because, like you just said, they didn't ask previously. Or if they did, then maybe they got just a very abrupt answer of, well, it'll all be over by the time you're 55. I know I wasn't even looking for menopause or perimenopause, didn't know what it was when it all started for me. And it seems that is still very familiar for many women. It's now becoming accepted that the hormones go into fluctuation and cause this disarray. The fact that you questioned why our hormones go awry is not something everybody is doing, and they're just accepting it and then trying to address it, treat it. What was your approach and how did you resolve it?
I really went back into history and I was like, well, when did this start? And you look back in the early last century and you discover that women were given pills of animal ovaries or even injected with animal ovaries because the idea was, oh, if your ovaries aren't working like a younger woman, then there's something wrong with you. And so we need to give you ovaries. In the 1940s, they were able to isolate estrogen and then they were able to make that into a pill form. The idea was, oh, if you're lacking in estrogen come midlife, then you must need it. And you must need it because we're going to trick your body into believing that you're not going through menopause. Now, when you look around for why does that happen? Why does that make sense? The only answer you hear is, oh, because women never used to live beyond 40. And so now your body's getting it wrong, but once upon a time you would die before you even reach menopause. And that's just simply not true. You can look through history and there are loads of examples of women living beyond menopause. And even I can quote a German Benedictine abbess from the 12th century who wrote about women's life cycles. And she was a sort of a mystic and a healer. And she wrote that women in their 50s cease to menstruate. And sometimes it happens in their 60s. So this is a text from the 12th century of Hildegard of Bingen writing that not that it's rare that women go through menopause, but it would be rare that women would go through menopause at 60 instead of 50. So women have always gone through menopause. So then I asked the question, well, why does it make any sense? Why would it make sense that all of a sudden the hormones will get it wrong? And do we need to tell the endocrine system to work in a different way from the way that it's naturally programmed to work? Mm-hmm. And to me, it seemed bizarre that we would have to go in, and tell our body how to work, just as I don't have to go in and tell my heart how to beat or my lungs how to exhale or my digestive system how to digest food. Why would I have to go in and start fiddling with my hormones? Could it be, I thought, that it's our very modern lifestyle that creates imbalance and that creates symptoms? And it's not actually our hormones at all. But what's happening is the shift in hormones is creating a very sensitive time. Mm-hmm. So just like in our teenage years, during pregnancy, postpartum, here we come to midlife, the hormones are shifting, creating sensitivity. And so when our lives are out of balance, it shows up very quickly as a symptom. So what's interesting is today, if a woman is pregnant and she's experiencing all kinds of symptoms, she'll go to the doctor. The doctor will say, maybe you're working too hard. How's your sleep? What's your diet? Do you have enough folic acid? Right? All these other things. And the doctor won't go in and say, oh, it's your hormones that are going crazy. We need to go in and fix them. There's an understanding that if a woman's life is out of balance during pregnancy, a sensitive time, then she will experience symptoms. Come midlife, we don't have that appreciation or compassion. And we don't say, oh, you're just going through a sensitive time. And yes, maybe the sensitive time is created through the hormone shifts, but it's not the hormones themselves that are creating the symptoms. It's when your life is out of balance. And so I came across an understanding of innate health, which looks at our relationship with our thoughts. And at the time when I was experiencing all my symptoms, the thought that kept coming up for me was I'm not enough. Because I was juggling my little business, juggling motherhood, felt like I wasn't really succeeding, just everything felt like a struggle. And I kept on hearing, I'm not enough. And when I heard that, I really believed it. And it made me feel really bad. And then through this understanding of innate health, I realized, oh, just because a thought comes in my head, it doesn't mean I have to believe it. And if I don't believe it, like I could just as easily not believe it as believe it. And if I don't believe it, I think I'm going to have an easier time. And at that point, when I saw that, it sounds simple, but it was very profound. I thought, oh, I think I'm not going to have PMS anymore, because I think my PMS is just coming from me thinking I'm not enough and I'm a failure and I wanted to, do this in my business and I'm not managing. And if I don't believe that whole story, I think I'm not going to have PMS. In fact, what happened was all my physical symptoms and PMS just cleared up.
We all carry around limiting beliefs, whether we're aware of them or not. Things that we've believed since childhood, maybe unconsciously, subconsciously, that we carry with us. Something like I'm not enough really must resonate with a huge number of people. We have huge expectations put on us, or we put them on ourselves as women, as adults, as mothers. How did you change your mindset so completely?
I often say to women that I work with, I wish I could copy and paste.
Yeah.
But every woman essentially will come to her own insight and understanding about what is out of balance for her and where she can see something new that will go beyond her beliefs that she's holding on to. And what's interesting is about what you said is that I had a really high expectation for myself, because as well as like feeling not enough, I was carrying this story of I'm the kind of woman that sets goals and meets them. Because I could go back through my life and pick up all different examples and say, look, this happened. But it wasn't actually true. It's not like every goal I ever set, I accomplished. But that was the story that I carried around with myself. And even my friends would tell me, oh, you're so determined and you set goals and you accomplish them. And that was really my story. So when things sort of went a bit off course, it felt like my identity was under attack. But that idea of my identity was made up. It was just a story that I created and was taking very seriously. And then there was the other story that I wasn't enough. No one else was telling me I wasn't enough. And no one else was telling me, oh, you should be selling this much and making that much, etc. It was just me, and I was believing it. So that was what I saw for myself. But when women get to a place of seeing their own insight, it comes from within them. I can't tell them what they need to change, but I can just shine a light on how we misunderstand our relationship to thought, how we hear these thoughts coming through our minds and believe them. And we don't have to. We really don't have to. And how we can trust that there's this divine intelligence that runs through us that can actually guide us. We think, for example, that we feel bad. That means there's something true about what's going on in our life. There's something true. I used to think that I felt bad because I'm not enough. And that was true. That wasn't true. And the feeling came up to tell me that wasn't true. But we think, oh, the bad feeling means there's something bad that's true. No, the feeling was coming up to sort of wake me up and to remind me, oh, you've got on that imaginary train again to fear, disappointment, etc., but you can get off. When I started to see that sort of more and more, and then I had that one insight that really shifted everything, it was just such freedom, that freedom of, oh, I have sort of, free will. I have a choice. I don't have to take all these thoughts seriously. I don't have to get down with a low feeling. I can just remember the feeling is pointing out where my state of mind is in the moment. And it's nothing more than that. And so really it was this journey of liberation and sense of, wow, that's amazing. perhaps I should share. So that's what I did.
Did you have to take some specific time out? Did you reflect, or was it just one of those inspirational moments?
Right. Well, for the few years I'd been having symptoms, I'd been going to acupuncture, I'd been taking bath remedies, I'd been using different creams and healing, all sort of more on the natural side. And something happened in 2014. We went on a lovely holiday to Thailand. And I kind of just forgot, to take my potions, and I wasn't getting my regular acupuncture treatment. And I noticed that my symptoms were really hardly there. And I thought, well, that's interesting. What happens on holiday? Of course, like we have a nice time on the beach, etc. I was like, but that's really interesting, because what's happening on holiday that is making my symptoms disappear? And why can't I bring it back with me? So when we came back from holiday, I thought, well, perhaps I won't go back to everything that I was doing to calm my symptoms. Perhaps I'll just sit with them. And there was some kind of shift that happened then that I was like, perhaps I don't need to fix them. Perhaps they're trying to tell me something. Perhaps there's something to learn. Perhaps I can just sit with them and be okay with them. And perhaps I can just trust my body that it knows what it's doing. Again, coming back to that sense of, it really doesn't make sense that my body's not intelligent, that it's gone stupid come midlife. So why is my body behaving in this way, and what can I learn? And so there were a few months where I would, all my symptoms came back, and it was pretty hard, but I just had a shift in my relationship with them. And I felt like I don't need to fix them. I don't need to fix myself. They just are. I don't need to be anywhere else but with them. At that time, I began to, see this new understanding, and it just all came together with, oh yes, my body knows exactly what it's doing. My body is brilliant. It doesn't need fixing, and I don't need fixing. Everything has just come to the surface because my life was out of balance, and my body wants me to get back into balance. And so when we look at midlife change in this way, we can see that it's a part of a brilliant design, because of course our body wants us to live long and healthy lives moving forward. And so there is this sensitive time that comes up at midlife. But how amazing that through this sensitive time, we can learn where true health lies. We could have had, that stressful time in our 20s and our 30s, and our bodies maybe let us get away with it sometimes. But we come into our 40s and the body's saying, I'm not letting you continue that route anymore. And you're going to learn where true health lies. And so it's this movement actually into our route to becoming a wiser elder. And why would we want to medicate that away? I understand, having been in the soup of symptoms, why we think, I want to medicate that away. And I want the thing, the pill, the cream that's going to fix me now. I was there. But if it's a journey, and it's something that we're designed to go through, and it's a process of graduation to almost like management level in humanity, why would we not want to experience change and move on wiser than we entered our 40s?
The very mention of holiday, again, resonates so strongly. I even wrote this morning in an email to someone, you should really be able to prescribe holidays, because if you turn off the email, and speaking personally, don't need to do the laundry, tidy up after the kids, or the domestic side of life, never mind the work side on top of that. If you can just stop that for even a small period of time, everything readjusts itself internally and, mentally, hormonally, physically. And you do come back more dynamic and more focused. And all it is a little bit of time off. Adjusting mindset and stress seems like the next best thing, and obviously has a hugely positive effect. In the media at the moment, and for quite a while now, there has been an enormous focus on HRT. And I'm not going to dispute the fact that it is key for many people, particularly perhaps post-surgery, and there is a vast number of success stories behind it. However, the attention it's getting has influenced many people's feelings that it's an essential. Why do you think this is, and how do we readdress that?
Yeah. Well, again, if you look back into the history of HRT, it's come in these cycles of huge promises made in the 1960s, basically saying it would cure 30 menopause symptoms or more. It would stop you from getting cancer, having heart attacks, and it would keep you looking sexy for life. Like this, there's a famous book called Feminine Forever that was written in the 1960s. And this will really set the flavor for medical approaches to menopause for decades. And there was no large clinical trials to back up any of those claims at the time. It was just thought, oh, your estrogen's dropping. Here, have some estrogen. That must be what you need because you need to be like a 30-year-old and take it for life. Over the decades, there were clinical trials eventually carried out and all the promises were sort of blew up. And then the industry regathered and came up with new promises and new promises. And over time, when you look at it, the number of symptoms that it can actually been proved to help has got fewer and fewer and fewer over time. But for some reason, this idea of women malfunction come midlife, and you still hear it, this, oh, because women never used to live beyond 40, so you must need a hormone replacement. And I would say there is no clinical research that has shown that women actually need HRT or BHRT. But there's a really good story that's been going on for decades that make us feel like something is going wrong and we need hormone supplementation. Now, like you said, for some women, it really is a lifeline, but I think it should really be viewed as first aid because what the medical industry doesn't tell us, and I've heard it from numerous women, is that when women come off HRT, normally after 7 years, many of them experience a complete return of their symptoms. If they had understood that menopause is a journey and your body wants you to see something about your health and wants you to make adjustments. And for some women, you know what, it might be just moving a little bit more or just cleaning up their diet or stopping smoking or something on sort of very basic pillars of health, you know, moving in that direction. For a lot of women, it's on the emotional, spiritual level. If our body wants us to learn something and we don't do anything because we've medicated our symptoms away, we stop taking the medication and the symptoms will come back. So I think for some women, they find it incredibly useful, good for them. But this idea that we need it by default is incorrect and just never been proven. It just seems that every decade, there's a new story that's been created. And I know in the UK, this year, it was all around dementia and Alzheimer's. And again, the research is really flimsy around it. But there's a sense of if women in their 60s are experiencing more dementia and Alzheimer's and in their 70s, then it must be to do with the menopause. No, there's a correlation, but it doesn't equal causation. And that's what they've done with so many of chronic diseases that you see increase from midlife onwards, but it doesn't mean that they increase because of our hormone levels. It means because if your life is out of balance, then you're putting yourself more at risk for chronic disease. Once we see that this is just something that's been dragged through history with all these myths about women's health, with all these myths about the malfunctioning female, and it comes from, these days, few doctors probably would say, women are the weaker sex. But it was just a manipulation of that very basic idea that menopause was viewed as a disease from the 1950s and 1960s. And these days, it's not so cool. It's not really called a disease, but it's treated like a disease. But it's not a disease. It's a natural part of our life cycle. And our bodies absolutely know how to go through it and to go through it smoothly. But when our life is out of balance, we are this partner in creation of our symptoms. Once we accept that responsibility and say, oh, maybe there's something that I can do, not in this, naughty you, why haven't you done it? Why haven't you fixed yourself, etc. But just like, oh, I think my life is out of balance. And often I ask women, what does your body want you to know? And they know. They know instinctively what's out of balance, but they feel that it's impossible to solve. They feel like, oh, my traumas or my stress or everything, it's so impossible, but it's not. It's much simpler. And that's really the good news, that our healing is so much simpler than we think. It really doesn't need to involve complicated digging out the past, complicated hormone manipulation, complicated other chemical manipulation. It's much, much simpler. The body knows how to heal if we show up as a loving partner in that process.
Puberty isn't a disease. Why should menopause be a disease?
Exactly.
Tania, if you were to give one starting point, one stepping stone for a woman who recognizes that she's in perimenopause, is experiencing symptoms, what should she address first?
First of all, I invite women to have a new relationship with their body and to really trust that there's a divine healing force that exists within each woman's body. And when we can relax into that, it kind of takes the stress off us feeling like, oh, I need to look out there to fix myself. No, you have everything you need within you to heal. We can ask ourselves, I wonder what my body wants me to know. And then just move in tiny steps. Oh, maybe I could do this. Maybe I could re-examine that. Maybe I can do that. And I see women just do that naturally when they just open themselves up to, what could I bring back into balance and coherence with a more natural path of living? It's so simple and it's so amazing when we feel that empowerment that we can get when we can heal our own symptoms.
Tania, where can people find you?
I have a website, thewiserwoman.com. They can contact me there and find out how I work with women and help women on this journey through perimenopause and menopause.
Anything else that you would like to add?
Thank you. It's a pleasure to meet you, and you're doing great work, really, bringing in a lot of variety of guests.
Oh, well, thank you very much indeed. It has been lovely to meet you. Thank you, Tania.
Thank you. Okay, take care.
You too. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
You can find Tania on her website, thewiserwoman.com, and I will leave the details in the show notes as usual. Please remember to follow us on all the podcast apps of your choice, including Podchaser, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, and Spotify. Leave us a review, as it really does make a difference and helps to signal where to find us. Thank you for listening. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.